Over 2,000 years ago, in a land divided by war, a silent strategist walked among kings. His name was Sun Tzu, but his power was not in his sword. It was in his knowing. He wrote not to command armies, but to command reality, to shape outcomes before battles began, to bend the will of enemy without ever being seen. His teachings were never meant for the masses. They were whispers passed from emperor to emperor, and now from tycoon to tycoon. The men who rule our world do not speak his name. They do not quote his scrolls, but they obey him without question. In this journey, you will receive 10 of his most forbidden truths. Each one is a blade, hidden in plain sight, used in silence by the powerful and never spoken aloud. This is the art of silent victory, domination without attention, influence without motion, victory without war. Chapter 1. The Invisible Blade. Quote, "The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting." Sun Tzu. Victory without battle, power without resistance. This is the path of the invisible blade. It was the spring of the Warring States period, a time of endless bloodshed, where rulers believed only in the sword and the spear. But one man moved differently. Sun Tzu, general of the state of Wu, was not a man of noise. He watched, he listened, and he understood something no other commander dared to. That the greatest victory is not when your enemies fall, but when they kneel by their own choosing. When a neighboring state threatened invasion, the king of Wu prepared his armies. But Sun Tzu stopped him. He sent no troops. He offered no terms. Instead, he unleashed disinformation, quiet agents who whispered in the right ears. He leaked forged plans of an alliance between their enemies' rivals. He allowed messengers to accidentally overhear troop movements that didn't exist. And as fear took root, the enemy king turned his forces inward, paranoid, fractured, exposed. No sword was drawn, no blood spilled, yet the threat dissolved like smoke. This was not war. This was design, and the design remains. Today, the battlefield has changed, yet the law has not. When Amazon wished to eliminate its competition in the early 2000s, it did not launch attacks or make noise. Instead, it priced certain products below cost, not for profit, but for pressure. Startups tried to match the pricing. Their cash reserves withered. Their investors withdrew. And one by one, they disappeared, voluntarily retreating from a war they could not afford to fight. Amazon never had to swing. It only had to exist, strategically, silently, and with intent. This is the invisible blade. A weapon so refined it leaves no trace, only results. So understand this. True power is not loud. It does not beg to be seen. It simply reshapes reality until the opposition becomes irrelevant. Influence their mind, not their army. Undermine belief before breaking formation. Subdue and leave no fingerprints. Chapter 2. The Mask of Fragility. Quote, "Appear weak when you are strong." Sun Tzu. The tiger that lowers its head is not afraid. It is measuring the distance before it leaps. To appear broken is not defeat. It is invitation. Invitation to overconfidence, to carelessness, to collapse. Sun Tzu understood this law well. For in war, the first weapon is perception. In the state of Qi, a rival general marched boldly across the plains, believing the land before him undefended. His scouts reported empty fields, abandoned supply posts, soldiers retreating with haste. He laughed. He called it a gift from the heavens. But it was a mask, a ruse, a dance of dust and shadows. Sun Tzu had ordered his troops to scatter deliberately, leaving trails of broken armor and half-burnt tents. The enemy advanced without caution, convinced they were pursuing cowards. Then the valley closed, ambush from both sides. They had not entered a battlefield. They had entered a trap. Sun Tzu had been strong all along. but he had worn the robe of the weak, and that robe, woven from illusion, proved sharper than any blade. This is not merely battlefield trickery, it is a lifelong weapon. The elite today still wear the same mask. In 2008, during the global financial collapse, Warren Buffett made moves that seemed cautious, even hesitant. While others shouted, he whispered. While markets panicked, he said only this: "Be fearful when others are greedy, and greedy when others are fearful." He let others believe he was waiting, passive, uncertain. But behind the curtain, he quietly acquired strategic stakes in companies like Goldman Sachs and Bank of America, at prices others were too blind to see. When the dust settled, his hesitation became dominance. His weakness had been an illusion, a cloak, a smokescreen. And so the lesson remains. Let them misread you. Let them underestimate your silence, for when your strength is seen too soon, it is resisted. But when it is hidden, it is unstoppable. Chapter 3. The Monk's Discipline. Quote, "If the mind is willing, the flesh could go on and on without many things." Sun Tzu. Power is not built in moments of indulgence. It is forged in long, silent rooms, where desire is starved and will becomes law. Sun Tzu did not seek warriors who were merely strong. He sought those who could go without rest, without comfort, without praise. For he knew, the man who can abandon all yet still advance cannot be stopped. In one campaign, the army of Wu marched into bitter mountain terrain. Food was scarce, shelter non-existent. Other generals begged to retreat. The men grew restless, but Sun Tzu imposed a vow of austerity. He rationed water by discipline, not rank. He ordered his officers to sleep on the ground beside their soldiers. He fasted with them. He endured with them. And something strange began to happen. The complaints ceased. The eyes sharpened. The troops, once wearied, now moved as one, lean, focused, fearless. By the time they reached the battlefield, their hunger had become an edge, and the enemy, fat on ease and assumption, fell like wheat before the blade. This was not merely a march, it was an initiation, a ritual of detachment, turning men into weapons. The same principle moves in the high towers of the modern world. In the founding years of Tesla and SpaceX, Elon Musk worked 20-hour days. He slept on the factory floor, ate in silence, not because he had to, but because he understood. To birth something enormous, you must shrink yourself to the bone. There was no luxury, no comfort, no peace, only mission. And so, like the monks of old, he entered a kind of war, not with others, but with softness. Because in the art of power there is a hidden rule. He who needs little can never be leveraged. He who detaches from comfort becomes impossible to break. Do not train for ease. Train for absence, and you will walk through storms like stone. Chapter 4. The Golden Exit. Quote, "Build your opponent a golden bridge to retreat across." Sun Tzu. The cornered beast fights hardest, but the wise strategist does not corner. He opens a path. To win is not always to destroy. Sometimes, true power is knowing when to let your enemy flee, and where. Sun Tzu once stood before a king whose rival had seized territory with speed, pride, and arrogance. The king wanted revenge. He demanded a siege, a total crushing of the enemy state. But Sun Tzu refused. "Strike now," he said, "and you will inherit only ashes and rebellion." Let him leave with his pride intact, and his people will not return to fight. So he built the illusion of mercy. He opened a mountain pass, left supplies untouched, and ordered drums to fall silent. The enemy, sensing fear, withdrew with haste, grateful for escape, never suspecting they had been allowed to live. What they carried home was not victory, but the illusion of it. Their morale faded, their armies scattered, their power broken, not by blood but by permission. This is the essence of the Golden Bridge. Control the retreat, and you control the memory of the war. In modern rooms of power, this tactic breathes in polished tones. When Apple faced a legal standoff with Samsung over patents, it did not demand a public humiliation. It settled behind closed doors, granting Samsung continued access to markets, while subtly changing supply deals, partnerships, and dependencies. Samsung stepped back, appearing unharmed. But Apple had already moved forward, unchallenged. The Golden Bridge had been laid, and by walking it, the rival disarmed itself. This law is misunderstood by the prideful. They want to destroy, to dominate visibly. But those who move empires understand. Humiliation breeds resistance, but dignity disarms. The exit you offer becomes the leash you hold. Give your opponent an escape. Let them believe it was their choice. And they will never know. You wrote the ending. Chapter 5. The Hidden Ledger. Quote, "Who wishes to fight must first count the cost." Sun Tzu. To rush into war is to gamble with your life. To measure its price before it begins is to tilt the game before the first move. Sun Tzu did not fear conflict, but he feared ignorance. For the sword drawn too soon cuts not the enemy, but the hand that wields it. In the war between the states of Chu and Wu, a young prince demanded immediate battle. He saw the numbers, he saw the pride of his troops, and he saw only the glory that would follow. But Sun Tzu halted the march. He asked a single question. How long can we hold if the skies turn against us? The generals fell silent. They had counted soldiers, but not supply. They had counted horses, but not the sickness of hooves. They had counted victories, but not weather, terrain, or morale. Sun Tzu spent 10 days in stillness, studying maps, watching winds, walking among the soldiers as they slept. Only then did he speak. We will fight, but not there, and not yet. And when they did, they crushed an army twice their size. The victory was not won on the battlefield. It was won in the ledgers no one else thought to open. Today, those ledgers look different, but they are just as invisible. Before activist investors like Carl Icahn or Bill Ackman move against a company, they spend months gathering data no one else sees, studying leadership psychology, shareholder weak points, legal cracks. They don't strike because they're angry. They strike because the math is precise and the path is clear, and if the numbers lie, they do not strike at all. This is not cowardice. This is restraint sharpened into dominance. So learn this. Never fight simply because you can. Fight only when the cost is known, the loss is manageable, and the result is profitable. Victory is not taken, it is calculated. He who counts in silence strikes in certainty. Chapter 6. The Chaos Code. Quote, "In the midst of chaos, there is also opportunity." Sun Tzu. Most men flee from chaos, but the wise do not run, they watch, because when the world loses its shape, those who can still see clearly become gods among the blind. Sun Tzu did not fear disorder. He studied it. He waited for it to rise like a storm. And then he entered, not to survive it, but to shape it. During the great floods that tore through the southern provinces, rival kingdoms halted all campaigns. Roads were impassable, supplies drenched, morale shattered. But Sun Tzu saw what the others could not. He saw hungry soldiers, desperate but obedient. He saw enemy camps trapped on flooded plains, unaware and slow. He saw the silence before the panic. And so, while others built dams, he built a plan. He moved through the storm like water itself. Boats where there were roads, fire where there was dampness, speed where there was confusion. By the time the rain stopped, the war was already over. The enemy never understood what had happened. They blamed nature, but it was not the storm that beat them. It was the man who used it. In our time, chaos looks different. In 2020, when the world locked down and markets drowned in red, most investors froze. But a few, those who understood the chaos code, stepped in while the floor was still shaking. They bought airlines, they bought tech, they bought fear. And months later, when the herd returned, the fortune had already moved. This is the hidden law. Chaos is not the enemy. It is the veil behind which power rearranges itself. Most panic, few plan, and only one takes the throne. So when the world fractures, do not flinch, do not speak. Observe, adapt, and move in the direction no one else dares to look. In chaos, the door opens, but only for those quiet enough to hear the hinge turn. Chapter 7. The Unseen Labor. Quote, "When the enemy is relaxed, make them toil." Sun Tzu. When your enemy feels safe, make them sweat. When they feast, make them starve. For the relaxed mind is a doorway, and only the quiet hand knows how to slip inside. Sun Tzu taught that the greatest strike is not made in rage, but in rhythm. When the opponent's guard is down, when the eyes close and the fire dims. Centuries after his teaching spread east, another man, half legend, half nightmare, moved with the same understanding. In the summer of 1462, Vlad Tepes, the Prince of Wallachia, faced the full might of the Ottoman Empire. Sultan Mehmed II, conqueror of Constantinople, crossed the Danube with an army of over 90,000 men. A force so vast, it was said the earth trembled beneath their march. Vlad, outnumbered nearly 10 to 1, did not meet them in open battle. He retreated, burned his own fields, poisoned wells, and waited. The Ottomans advanced deeper, arrogant and relaxed, believing resistance had broken. Then came the night. June 17th, 1462, the sky moonless, the wind still. Vlad led a strike force of 7,000 riders, cloaked in silence, slipping into the enemy camp near Targovishte. But this was not a battle. It was terror turned into strategy. He moved through the tents like smoke, killing commanders in their sleep, setting fires in patterns to confuse and divide. He targeted the Sultan's own tent, nearly reaching it before vanishing into the darkness. The Ottomans awoke not to war, but to disarray. Horses scattered, torches collided, and for days afterward, the Sultan's army marched in fear, sleepless, doubting shadows, watching every flicker in the trees. Vlad did not win with numbers. He made the enemy toil in their minds, in their nerves, in their fear of the next night. This is the secret Sun Tzu knew. War is not won only by force. It is won by fatigue. And today the battlefield looks different, but the principle remains. In high-stakes negotiations, elite players often delay their final offer until the 11th hour. Not because they lack clarity, but because they know. The longer the other side waits, the more they sweat. And the more they sweat, the more they give. Or in business, when a company leaks uncertainty before a merger, forcing rivals to burn resources chasing rumors, only to strike when they are weakest, distracted, overextended. So learn this. Let your enemy relax, not out of mercy, but design. Strike when their minds are elsewhere. Force them to question shadows. And when they run, let them run tired. For the hand that creates the toil never toils itself. Chapter 8. The Withdrawal Instinct. Quote, "He who knows when he can fight and when he cannot will be victorious." Sun Tzu. Power is not found in constant attack. It is found in the knowing dash, knowing when to strike and when to vanish like mist. Sun Tzu taught that wisdom is not in motion alone, but in the pause. The tiger that hunts without hunger wastes strength. The general who fights every battle dies in one of them. The art is in restraint, in reading the field with eyes unclouded by pride. Centuries later, this law was carved into the earth in the cold forests of Eastern Europe. In 1812, Napoleon Bonaparte marched into Russia with the largest army Europe had ever seen, over 600,000 men. He expected decisive engagement, a grand battle to end resistance. But the Russians, led by General Mikhail Kutuzov, did something unexpected. They withdrew. They abandoned cities. They scorched their own fields. They gave Napoleon nothing, no food, no glory, no clear victory. Many in France mocked them. But Kutuzov knew a battle now would be lost. A battle later, on frozen ground with stretched supply lines and starving horses, would be inevitable and winnable. And so winter came. The roads turned to ice. Disease, hunger, and frost bit through the Grande Armée. When Napoleon finally ordered the retreat from Moscow, he returned with less than 100,000 men. The Russian sword had been patience. Victory came not from a clash, but from calculated denial. The choice not to fight had been the deadliest move of all. In today's world, this principle remains alive, but hidden in suits and screens. Savvy investors step back from volatile markets not out of fear, but out of clarity. They do not chase every trend. They let the masses burn themselves in the frenzy, then return with capital intact when the field is quiet and the prices are begging. Startups walk away from deals when the terms smell wrong. Politicians pull out of debates when the timing favors the opponent. And this is the unseen thread. Restraint is not weakness, it is timing. Withdrawal is not surrender, it is calculation. He who preserves strength today rules tomorrow. So do not measure victory by motion. Measure it by awareness. For the warrior who does not fight when the fight is wrong is the one still standing when all others fall. Chapter 9, The Strategy Mirror. Quote, "Strategy without tactics is the slowest route to victory. Tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat." Sun Tzu. A man with vision, but no hands, builds castles in the air. A man with motion, but no map, walks in circles. Sun Tzu drew the line between the two. Strategy is the vision. Tactics are the steps. One without the other is blindness. Together, they become inevitability. In the late 3rd century BCE, the great general Hannibal Barca crossed the Alps into Italy. A feat no one believed possible. It was a masterpiece of tactics. Elephants over snow, speed through impossible terrain, surprise flooding into the Roman heartland. And for a time it worked. He crushed the Romans at Cannae. Nearly 50,000 Roman soldiers dead in a single day. His tactics were flawless. But what Hannibal lacked was a long-term strategy. He had no political alliances in Italy, no plan to capture Rome, no structure to hold what he had won. And so, despite his brilliance, his victories became shadows. He wandered the land, undefeated, and slowly irrelevant. Rome, wounded but strategic, endured. And Hannibal, the genius tactician, was forced to flee. Not because he was beaten, but because he had no destination beyond the next battle. This is the trap of noise before defeat. Motion without meaning, action without aim. In the modern world, this pattern repeats, especially among the ambitious. Many build flashy brands, viral products, fast launches, but without a foundation beneath them. They win attention, but lose direction. They dominate headlines, but not markets. And when the noise fades, they discover what Hannibal did: you can win every battle and still lose the war. In contrast, Consider Elon Musk's dual strategy with SpaceX and Starlink. While the world saw rockets and Mars headlines, he was building satellite infrastructure, quietly weaving a communications empire across the sky. The tactics were fire and steel, but the strategy was invisible and absolute. This is Sun Tzu's mirror. Tactics are what they see. Strategy is what you hide. The wise move both as one. The fool masters one and mocks the other. So ask yourself before each action, is this step part of a greater shape or just sound in the wind? For when the war is long, only those who align vision and movement reach the throne. Chapter 10. The Elemental Strike. Quote, "Let your plans be dark and impenetrable as night, and when you move, fall like a thunderbolt." Sun Tzu. Nature moves without apology. The wind does not explain. The fire does not wait for permission. And when the mountain decides to fall, it does not tremble. Sun Tzu did not only study war, he studied nature, not as metaphor, but as blueprint. He saw that the most powerful forces do not signal their arrival. They build in silence, gather in stillness, and then strike with divine certainty. In one campaign, Sun Tzu trained his forces for months without engagement. He allowed rumors to spread that he had grown cautious, that his soldiers were weak, that his command had faltered. And when the enemy relaxed, he moved, swift as wind through trees. His formations tight as woven wood, his attacks sudden as fire in a dry field. And once his objective was seized, he became still again, like mountain stone. This was not chaos, it was rhythm. Each move drawn from the elements themselves, wind to arrive, wood to hold, fire to break, mountain to anchor. This final lesson is the summoning of all the others. In the modern age, this law lives in algorithms and wires. Consider the high-frequency traders who operate in the milliseconds. Their code scans markets like wind, silent, unseen. And when an opportunity arises, they strike before human eyes can blink. Their thunderbolt is speed, their stillness is automation. Or the tech companies who build in secrecy for years, and then release a product that reshapes the entire industry overnight. No leaks, no warnings, only a sudden presence, immovable. This is the law of the elemental strike. Let your planning be shadowed. Let your rise be quiet. Let your blow be unmistakable. The one who moves like fire but roots like mountain is never outrun and never removed. So when you act, do not step, fall. Fall like the hammer of the sky, and when they ask where you came from, let there be no answer. Only aftermath. Final chapter, the War Scroll Summary. You have now walked the path of 10 laws, not laws written in courts, but carved in silence, in shadow, in strategy. These were not teachings for the many. They were whispers for the few, passed from scroll to sovereign, from sovereign to empire. And now, perhaps, to you. You have learned how the elite win without fighting, how they disappear when war begins, and how they return when the crown is unguarded. Not with force, but with design. These are the ways of silent victory, to move unseen, to control without holding, to conquer without ever being named. Now, the war is yours. But you must choose which field it will unfold on. Your business, your wealth, your relationships, your inner mind. Wherever you apply these laws, do it quietly, do it completely, and do it as if no other path was ever written. If these teachings stirred something in you, leave your mark below. Tell me which law you will carry into your next battle. And if you wish to learn deeper laws from deeper masters, subscribe to the Obsidian Order, because the real war is never declared. It is only won.